Hey guys, it's Gabe Holcomb. I'm back here with Reformed Reason, and I just wanted to talk to you today a little bit about Reformation Day and about Halloween. So I'm really over the sentiment online that Halloween is just this day of specifically heightened demonic activity that we can't do anything with, that we need to have this defeatist mentality. And I'm also over the fact that we don't really want to, a lot of times in some Christian circles, acknowledge the Reformation, that somehow it's like, oh, this horrible thing in and of itself. So I want to talk to a few different things. Hey, Halloween is pretty awesome, and so is the Reformation Day, so let's talk about it. Alright, so first of all, ghosts, candy, costumes, demonic, the occult. Today we're going to talk about why Halloween isn't as dark as you think. And what I mean by that is not to say that the modern misconception of what Halloween has become isn't dark, because it is. It's become very dark. There are a lot of pagan things that take place on this day. But my point is going to be, it's not unlike different holidays, right? So we're going to also talk about why it's Reformation Day. So overall, my thesis is going to be that not only should we consider enjoying Halloween, but we should bring it together with a celebration of our Reformation Day, and we should want to enjoy things like fall festivals, things like trunk or treat or trick or treat. That's not an inherently pagan ideal that we have to go away from, nor is it something that we have to hyper-Christianize, that there's enough liberty for these things. So the Reformation Day should be a celebration of truth, grace, and a bit of German courage, a bit of Reformer courage. So the main claim that it's purely pagan comes from the celebration of Samhain. It looks like Samhain, but it's Samhain. It's this celebration of remembering the dead in a sort of way, and that there's some sort of over-spiritual place for this. Well, this celebration sure may have been pagan, but what we see is there's a large Christianization that happens. So on the Roman Catholic Church calendar, the night before All Saints Day is November 1st. October 31st is the night before. That's where we get All Hallows Eve. So the primary remembrance for All Saints Day is these departed saints. So as a Reformed person, as a Presbyterian, I don't pray to saints. I'm not super concerned with what the saints are doing outside of the glory that they're experiencing with Christ. But to say that all of what comes from Halloween is pagan and it's just demonic and it's just horrible, it's just not the case. Frankly, much of the practices that we get from the Middle Ages are actually what we celebrate. So we're not actually celebrating Samhain. That's just not what's happening. So to say that we're being inherently pagan. So case in point, one of the most major portions of pagan worship regarding and around Samhain had to do with bonfires, as well as some other pagan rituals having to do with these bonfires, making big bonfires, and somehow it being a siphoning point for the dead. Now, I'd like to ask, how many Christians, specifically youth group meetings, have you had around a bonfire? Additionally, I want to ask, how many church events, because of the fall season, are doing men's events or just fall festivals around a bonfire? Well, shame on you, you pagan scum. Wait, no, that's actually stupid. Because we'd say, no, we can just reclaim that at best, but if anything, that it's not inherent to that. To say that our God is not strong enough to contend with demons is one thing, that we should be worrisome. But as Christians, if we are truly going to encounter this demonic activity, which I'm not sold on the fact that there's more demonic activity during these times. I think frankly, if you're scared about Halloween right now, you're probably scared of these Barnes & Noble witches that wear crystals around their necks as Gen Z. And the reality is that our God has no problem with Barnes & Noble spiritual section witches. So one of these things, right? So let's talk about this. Let's talk about trick-or-treating. So even the process of trick-or-treating, most of the traditions that we keep are from the Christianization that happens around All Saints Day and All Hallows Eve. So that's actually where we get the name Halloween from, is that derivation from All Hallows Eve. So where we're hallowing the saints. So one of the initial practices of trick-or-treating, where Christians could have an issue with, is where it comes from. But to say it's non-Christian is just farcical. So there was this practice called souling, where essentially you'd have these Christian children going door to door, and they would ask for food or treats in exchange for prayers for the dead. And so the whole idea was not just, oh, hey, would you pray for my grandpa? It seems to be a little bit more, in my understanding and looking through some of the historical records, specifically in portions of Europe, that they would go up and they would say, hey, can I pray for one of your souls that are departed? Can I give an All Hallows prayer before the eve of All Saints Day for them, and then you can give me candy? So not quite the same thing. So I don't think we should be doing that in trick-or-treat. But what I do think is that we have to get away from, oh, even going door to door, that's just pagan. That's just pagan. It's inviting kids in and they're doing witchcraft. No, that was a Christian, though flawed, though something I would disagree with, that was a Christian innovation in the sense of this medieval Catholic derivation, where souling would happen. Even the concept of jack-o'-lanterns, a lot of times these kids, they would take turnips. And by the way, if you want to look up a picture of this, I'll put one up here. It's scary. These turnips that they would carve like the proto jack-o'-lanterns. And this was, in some cases, they would say, oh, to ward off portions of the dead or ward off demons. And so we can get some of that and also parse that against, man, that might be the case that they thought there was some special reason for superstition. But for us, we don't really have to worry about that. So while Halloween has been commercialized and twisted, we can certainly say, hey, if you don't want to take place in certain Halloween activities, that might be because there's some really crazy pagan things that are happening. But to say that Christians cannot take part in it, or that we are subjecting ourselves to a more demonic thing or more demonic practice, is absolutely ridiculous. To say that we should be fearful even of the demons when we are Christians, no, if there's one place we should triumph, it is in a place like Halloween, to go, no, even the day that God used it, as I'm going to talk about, also as a reformation for our faith, to bring us back to truth, to show us that demonic realities don't have a hold on God's people. So my initial charge would be, go and celebrate, because most of the traditions that we have, even around baking, around going through, around asking, the trick-or-treating, the kids knocking on doors, that comes from a Christianization of a holiday that the pagan roots are more so things that we also celebrate, but we don't really acknowledge. So is there heightened spiritual activity? I don't know. I don't know that there's more demonic things happening around Halloween than there are other times. I can say people might try to do it, but guess what? Christians, you don't have anything to worry about. So sure, don't send your kids to the pits of hell. If anything, we should have alternatives. So one thing I want to speak to before I talk about the Reformation Day in and of itself is, a lot of people go, I am not going to celebrate. I don't want to celebrate. I'm not going to be part of this. This is ridiculous. But then they'll carve pumpkins and they'll do bonfires. And they'll maybe do trunk or treat. Some of them will be like, no, we don't want to do that. We're not about Christianizing pagan practice to some regard, which, okay, maybe. But both of those things come from, one is more pagan affiliated with Samhain, but to say, no, making a fire is not inherently pagan. And then, making these pumpkins, that would be very, very much a practice derived from what would appear to be poor Christianization, something we disagree with. It's not actually warding off anything. And so that I'd say, I bring you to the Corinthians principle, where Paul is talking about, hey, when this meat is made, it's sacrificed to idols in the temple, and you go eat it. If it causes your brother to stumble, if it causes your children to stumble, especially with younger children, I'd say, yeah, maybe go back from some of the Halloween activities. But to demonize somebody for enjoying them, akin to Paul going and saying, hey, this meat is sacrificed to idols. Hey, it's not what goes into the body that defiles, right? It's this whole idea of myself, I've been defiled enough. It's what comes out to say these actions that God isn't real, that demon isn't real. So do I want to go out and wear a slightly spooky costume and run around with my kiddos? Absolutely. That's totally fine. I think being in a safe neighborhood is more so what it's about, and using just general discretion. But to demonize people for celebrating it because it's more demonic than you like, I just don't see that, especially in light of what Paul tells us about Christian liberty. So I would say, apply that Corinthian principle there to say, well, I'm willing to do pumpkins, so I must have something from it. Or Christians, well, pagans used to put trees in their houses, but that became a very Christian practice. So we have to be able to parse apples and oranges, and I would say absolute Christian liberty. I would even encourage you to sort of reclaim portions of that, and that's what I'm going to talk a little bit more about. So Reformation Day. So on that fateful Halloween, 1517, October 31st, 1517. Martin Luther nails his 95 Theses to the Wittenberg Cathedral, to his church door. And so what he says is, I have these 95 problems. So Martin Luther doesn't endeavor to start some crazy revolution. He's not some insurrectionist. Frankly, one issue that we see a very Hollywood-oriented view of this, that he goes in and he's on trial in the Diet of Worms, and he's here, not necessarily the Diet of Worms. I know it's fun to say, it's easy to remember like that, but he's here at the Diet of Worms, and he's in here and he says, my conscience is held captive, and he stood up and he was ready to get murdered just then. He was courageous, and I don't want to take anything away from that for Martin Luther. But we have to remember, he actually asked for 24 hours to think it over. There was this idea where he's here, and they're like, do you recant? Like, we're willing to take you back, but you got to recant. This stuff is crazy to the medieval Catholics that had strayed so far from biblical theology that Martin Luther, probably having a more biblical theology, I'd say absolutely having one, is demonized for that. And he takes it so seriously, he's not willing to be just some crazy insurrectionist, that you kind of hear this mumbling, and he's like, I'd like to think it over. I want to go to my cell. And he writes this beautiful prayer where he's basically, I feel, it's kind of like he says this, I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't, but that my conscience is held captive. And that's what he goes back the next day and he says, unless you can show me in Scripture, my conscience is held captive. So this is the act that sparks the Protestant Reformation. So up to this point, obviously you've had this major split of Catholic and Orthodox in this great schism. But past this, with the Reformation, this is very new. This has not been, hey, we want to get away and we just want to be insurrectionists. We just want to get out of the world. We just want to do our own thing. We hate you guys. It was a genuine look to love and reform. But this act sparks the Protestant Reformation no less. So they have him in there. He's thought it through. And now we have a big split. So what is it over? What are the primary issues? So if the Reformation was about anything, this is going to be more of a simple understanding of it, but it was about the sola. So sola scriptura, so Scripture alone, sola fide, faith alone, sola gratia, grace alone, solus Christus, which is Christ alone, and sola Deo gloria, to the glory of God alone. So this was particularly coming against the Catholic understanding of a works-based salvation. So for that reason, as Protestants, man, we should love Reformation Day. So at this point in history, we shouldn't love schism as much as we should go, we love truth. And if truth and true biblical adherence prescribes schism from the sinful party to say this is truly what we need to do when we have aired our grievances and that's not kept, that's okay to do. So some fun facts here that obviously Luther didn't mean to start that church, but the Gutenberg printing press helps the Reformation spread like wildfire. It's at the perfect time just to say, man, God's truth has been preserved. This is a good year. There are a lot of people brewing in other convictions. There were some proto-reformers, some reformers beforehand, like Jan Hus, just this idea that you'll burn this goose, but there's a bird that's going to come after me, right? His last name having to do with goose, that man, God is going to be faithful to his people. A mighty fortress is our God. It's one hymn. I know I sang at church this last week, the Reformation Sunday celebration, that it was even the battle hymn of the Reformation in many ways. It was penned by Luther. So once you see this taking place, Luther's like, all right, I'll wear that hat. I'll be that guy. And even Reformation Day is a national holiday in parts of Germany. So what I want to contend for in this video is not that, man, if you are truly grated in conscience against Halloween, that you throw all that away. You just be willing to put your kids in front of every pagan source in the world. No, that's dumb. But what I am contending for is that we thank God for gospel clarity and freedom from works-based religion on this day. I am contending that we teach kids and friends about church history, about grace, about Scripture. I remember being at one church and going to help out and lead on what would have been Reformation Sunday and been like, guys, I'm super excited. It's so cool that we get to be here as Protestants this far removed from the Reformation. Wow, what a beauty. And they just looked at me, they're like, what is that? What are you talking about? Man, if you are Protestant today, frankly, if you're anything but Catholic or Orthodox that stemmed from the Reformation, you have everything to thank. If you're a Baptist, you have the Reformation to thank. If you're Presbyterian, you certainly have the Reformation to thank. Certainly, if you're Lutheran. And so to go and say, wow, that's just not something we need to remember, that's ridiculous. So I'm saying, in conjunction with Halloween, sing hymns, host a Reformation trivia night, watch a movie about Luther. But at the same time, we don't have to glorify evil to do that. We can connect with neighbors. What an opportunity is it to say it is a societal expectation that people are going to come up to your door and you're going to come up to other people's door somewhat unannounced with everybody's kids out in a merry sort of environment. And that's a cultural convention. That's not a weird thing. And then you're going to take that as an opportunity not to evangelize. Shame on you in the name of going away from paganism. We should say, I want to hand out candy with kindness. Maybe I'm handing out tracts. Maybe I'm saying, hey man, where do you go to church at? We're having a Reformation celebration. We're having a trick or treat. And then if you are so worried about paganism, why wouldn't you make a place where they can have Christian values? I think this is a broader principle, to be in the world and not of it. We can redeem the holiday by shining light on what could be a dark night, but it's not really meant to be in its modern traditions through things with the church and some of the Catholic origins, but certainly not when it coincides with Reformation Day. That's awesome. So Christians don't need to fear October 31st. We get to own it. That's awesome. It's the day the gospel broke some chains and the day that we can bring light to our neighborhoods. Let's break the chains of what sin has hold on our place, because on our world, because Christ has already done that for us. So in terms of a call to action, yes, go hang out and have fun with your kids. Go wear a Superman costume and just don't turn your porch light off be more willing to turn on the light of the gospel and carry that with you, whether that's handing out candy, whether that's going in your neighborhood. What kind of gospel conversations could you have, for one? But two, don't be afraid to redeem practices. I mean, that's awesome. So love your neighbors. Remember that Jesus is Lord over every day of the calendar. Our chief holiday, our chief celebration is the Lord's Day, that we're thankful that Christ, he defends his people, he loves his people, and he takes care of us. But past that, it's okay to celebrate some of these. Do you say there are cultural practices that we can use to Christianize our world? So whether you're nailing theses or handing out Reese's, do it to the glory of God, and stop demonizing your neighbor for Halloween. I'd love to do a more in-depth video of this, of why so many people want to make pagan the holidays and we can't celebrate anything or birthdays. I'd love to do more on that. If you guys want to see that, let me know. But for one, yes, start being more about theses, and with that, hand out some more Reese's peanut butter cups. Super thankful for you guys. I hope you have a great day. So let me know, how are you going to celebrate Reformation Day? How are you celebrating Halloween? What costume are you wearing? I'm somewhere between Superman and Martin Luther right now in my choices, and I'll probably decide tonight. Thankful for you guys. I hope to see you soon. This has been Gabe Holcomb with Reformed Reason, and I'll see you next time.